The small plane shuddered violently as it clawed its way through turbulent clouds. I was Sarah, chief cartographer, strapped tightly into the co-pilot seat. My hands gripped the edge of my harness as the cold realization settled in. This wasn't turbulence. This was deliberate. Rhys, my husband and expedition leader, leaned over, offering me a bottle of water laced with a poison so subtle, so precise, it mirrored the calculated cruelty I had long suspected. "The discovery is too valuable to share, Sarah," he said, his voice almost casual over the radio. "You've always been meticulous, but your ethics, they were becoming a liability. The expedition's success comes before your caution." I felt the icy edge crawl through my veins, spreading fast, stealing warmth, clarity, life. My maps, my coordinates, my careful planning, they meant nothing to him. He valued only the treasure, the glory, the merciless pursuit of profit. As the plane dipped and groaned, the wilderness spread beneath me, untouched, pure, a betrayal by him staining every contour. I tried to shout, to argue, but my voice faded into a whisper against the roar of the failing engine. I saw the terrain I had loved for so long. The rock faces, the hidden valleys, the forests painted in the soft light of early morning, and I realized that my devotion, my life, my expertise, had been treated as nothing more than an obstacle to Rhys's greed. I closed my eyes, the cold numbing everything, and yet in that final, fleeting clarity, I made a vow. If I were given life again, if I could return to the moment before this betrayal, I would ensure that he never reached the treasure. He would chase coordinates that led only to ruin, and every misstep would be guided by the very expertise he had tried to destroy. And then darkness claimed me. I awoke to the faint scent of old paper, the warmth of sunlight spilling across a dusty lecture hall. Maps of ancient explorations and carefully measured coordinates were scattered across the wooden tables. I was 21, back before the expedition, before Rhys, before the poison ever touched me. I blinked, disoriented, then focused on the person standing at the front of the room. Devin, Rhys's chief rival, his opposite in every way. Meticulous, principled, cautious to a fault, but brilliant. I remembered him as the man Rhys had mocked relentlessly, dismissing his warnings as sluggishness, his care as weakness. But now, Devin was my key to justice, my ally in a war that had yet to begin. He spread out a map of the northern reaches, pointing to the line his team would follow. I saw it immediately, a hidden flaw, subtle but catastrophic. A ravine, partially obscured by terrain features, would halt the expedition and put lives at risk. Only my future knowledge could reveal it. "Your route won't work," I said, tapping the map, trying to sound confident. My voice carried a certainty I didn't yet feel. Devin looked up, brow furrowed. "How do you know that?" "I've seen it," I replied simply. "The coordinates are wrong. I can show you the true path, but I need your honesty. Absolute honesty. I need you to follow the map as I've corrected it, without deviation or pride guiding your decisions." Devin studied me, his eyes sharp, assessing.
"Why?"
"Why help you? What do you get out of this?" "My focus isn't on me," I said, keeping my voice calm, deliberate. "It's on the truth. Rhys doesn't care about accuracy. He only chases what he can claim as his own. If we don't correct this now, the expedition will fail, and countless lives could be endangered." He hesitated, then slowly nodded. "All right, I'll follow your guidance. But I need to know you're committed, that this isn't a trick." "I am," I said. And at that moment, I realized the weight of trust. Devin's calm, methodical acceptance of my advice was more powerful than any authority Rhys could wield. For the first time since the plane, I felt a flicker of control. We would navigate carefully. Together, we would ensure that truth and precision were honored. If anyone had told me that returning to age 21 would feel heavier than dying in a plane crash, I might have laughed. But that was before the weight of knowledge, of betrayal, of the future, of the exact coordinates of my own death, settled into my bones like an unwelcome winter. It was late afternoon when I found Devin again. He sat alone in the cartography lab, bent over a table scattered with elevation profiles and topographical reconstructions. The amber light from the high windows cut sharp lines across his face, highlighting the seriousness etched into every quiet movement he made. He didn't look up when I entered. He didn't need to. "You corrected the route again," he said, voice low but edged with something new, respect or suspicion or both. "And once again, the data supports you." I approached slowly. "Then you understand why accuracy matters." Devin leaned back, exhaling. "I understand that you are either incredibly gifted or hiding something monumental." I held his gaze. "I'm not hiding malicious intent." He didn't press further, and I silently thanked him for being the kind of man who didn't demand answers he wasn't entitled to. That quiet restraint, so unlike Rhys's invasive entitlement, brought a strange ease into the room. Devin spread out another map. "I want you to review something for me. This is the proposal we'll take to the funding board next month." I froze. That proposal, this very map, would one day be used to sabotage Devin's career. I remembered Rhys mocking him for months, calling him the paper navigator, accusing him of hiding behind maps to avoid real exploration. Rhys had ensured the funding went to his own recklessly plotted route instead, promising shortcuts and faster results. Shortcuts that eventually killed me. I pulled up a chair beside Devin. "The Foundation will choose Rhys unless we get ahead of him," I warned softly. "He'll promise flashier results with fewer safety protocols." Devin scoffed. Typical Rhys. His tone surprised me. Not bitter, disappointed. Like Rhys's ambition hurt him, not because they were rivals, but because Devin cared deeply about responsible exploration.
He tapped the corner of the map.
"If you know something about his proposal, now is the time to tell me." I inhaled.
Slowly, carefully.
"His numbers won't match the terrain. He'll fabricate projections, exaggerate elevation differences to justify a faster route." "You're certain?" "I've seen him do it. In my last life. In the meetings where I sat beside him, trying to point out the inaccuracies until he dismissed me with a sharp whisper. Don't undermine me, Sarah. We need the funding." Devin rubbed his jaw, thinking. If that's true, we can catch it. But we need proof. "We will," I said. "And you'll present first. You'll set the standard before he even has a chance to speak." He blinked at me like he hadn't expected that level of confidence. "Why are you helping me so much, Sarah?" "Because you're the one who tried to save me when I was already dead. Because you were the only voice of reason in an expedition full of arrogance. Because you deserved better than what Rhys took from you." I swallowed the truth and offered the only answer I could safely give. "Because your maps don't lie." For the first time, a faint smile tugged at the corner of Devin's mouth, small, fleeting, but genuine. "Then let's make sure Rhys is due," he murmured. There was no triumph in his voice, no hunger for revenge, only resolve. And something inside me shifted. Standing beside Devin, watching his unwavering dedication to precision and honesty, I realized that this was where my new life began, not in vengeance, but in realignment. A reversing of the compass. This time, the truth would win. This time, the maps would lead somewhere safe. This time, I wouldn't die for someone else's ambition. Devin gathered the corrected drafts, his movements brisk with purpose. "All right, Sarah. Let's chart a new course." And we did, together. Rhys always found a way to fill a room before he even entered it. Laughter too loud, confidence too polished, charm sharpened into a weapon. I used to mistake that charisma for warmth. Now, hearing it echo down the university hallway like the warning growl of a predator, I felt my hands instinctively curl into fists. He swept into the cartography building with a swagger that belonged to a man who had already rewritten the future in his own name. Students turned. Professors paused. He soaked in the attention like sunlight. And then his eyes landed on me. "Sarah." His smile was perfect, devastating and fake. "I didn't expect to see you here. I thought you were too advanced for these little academic corners." Last time, that flattery had felt intoxicating. This time, it felt like chloroform. "I'm assisting on a research project," I said coolly. Rhys's attention slid past me, straight to Devin, who stood behind a drafting table, posture rigid, expression unreadable. Well, well. Devin Hart, Rhys drawled, still playing with colored pencils instead of doing real fieldwork. Devin didn't rise to the bait. He rarely did. Precise maps prevent accidents, Rhys. Rhys laughed, dismissive. Accidents are just evidence that you took risks worth taking. I felt my pulse spike, a flashback of a plummeting plane, a shaking compass, the metallic taste of poison. Not this time. Rhys, I said, stepping between them before he could scan the table and notice the drafts Devin and I had been preparing. Did you need something? He studied me with interest. Sharp interest. The kind that said he didn't like being kept out of anything. I heard the department is choosing a lead for the next funded expedition, Rhys said. Thought I'd stop by. Show my face. Remind everyone I'm the obvious choice. Devin's jaw tightened. I knew what would happen if Rhys got this funding. He would fast-track the expedition. Cut corners.
Lie.
And Devin would be forced onto a secondary team or sidelined completely. The chain reaction would lead to my eventual death, even if I avoided marrying Rhys in this timeline. So I plastered on a polite smile. Then you should make sure your proposal is airtight. Rhys grinned like I'd praised him. It always is.
A lie.
A lie I intended to expose. After he left, the room felt like it exhaled. Devin turned to me, voice low. You know he's dangerous, right? Not just arrogant. More than you know. Yes. And you're aligning yourself with me, he continued cautiously. Which means at some point, he'll see you as siding against him. His concern wasn't pride or possessiveness. It was fear, for me. It startled me how much that mattered. I can handle Rhys, I whispered. I know exactly how he operates. Devin studied me for a long, heavy moment. You speak like you've lived this already. In a way, I had. But I couldn't give him that truth. Instead, I said, let's focus on your proposal. If it's perfect, the board won't even consider his. He nodded, though uncertainty shadowed his eyes. I won't let you get dragged into something dangerous. You won't, I said softly. Because this time, I wasn't walking blind into Rhys's trap. We worked late into the night. The quiet between us wasn't empty. It was steady, grounding, a tether pulling me out of the past and into a clearer future. Devin's presence was calm, thoughtful, meticulous. Where Rhys demanded admiration, Devin earned trust without asking for it. At one point, he caught me staring at him over the blue-lit maps. What? He asked, faintly amused. You navigate by honesty, I murmured. Most people don't. His expression softened, something I'd never seen before in my previous life. Something gentle. That's the only way the map leads somewhere worth going, he said. And for the first time since waking in this second chance, I felt the future shift, just slightly, onto safer ground. The morning of the funding board meeting felt like stepping onto a stage where every spotlight was pointed straight at the parts of me I wasn't sure were ready. I'd barely slept. My mind kept looping through every potential argument, every question they might throw, every way Ryder could twist the narrative to make us look reckless instead of resourceful. Silas walked beside me toward the Municipal Arts Building, calm, unreadable, annoyingly steady. His hands were tucked in his jacket pockets, and he moved like he already knew the outcome and wasn't worried about it. Don't catastrophize, he said without looking at me. I'm not catastrophizing. I lied instantly. You're catastrophizing with rhythm, he added. Your footsteps are practically shaking. I looked down. He wasn't wrong. My stride was uneven, rushed. My heartbeat matched it, like tapping a snare too fast. We reached the glass doors, and I could already see the board members gathering around a long table inside.
Suits. Clipboards.
Matching mugs. It looked like the set of a documentary about bureaucracy. Ryder wasn't here yet, but his presence was already woven through the atmosphere. Everyone whispering about the tunnel incident, the unauthorized gig, the noise complaint. None of them knew he had orchestrated half of it, but the rumors had spread too fast for us to correct. Silas nudged me gently. We go in. We tell the truth. Not the whole messy truth, just the parts that help us survive. Is that ethical? I whispered. It's strategic, he replied. Ethics, without strategy, gets you crushed. Inside, everything smelled like coffee and cold printer paper. We took our seats as the board chair, a tall woman with rectangular glasses and the expression of someone who never lost a debate, cleared her throat. Thank you for coming, she said. We've received concerning reports about your group's recent activities. There it was. The we're not angry, we're disappointed tone. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, but Silas calmly opened the folder he brought. Photos from our community performances, letters from students we'd taught, data showing the turnout we consistently pulled. Visual proof that we were more than one chaotic night in a tunnel. He slid the stack forward like a gambler laying down a card he knew would win. The board members picked up the pages.
Some leaned in.
One even smiled, small but real. I could almost breathe again. But then the door clicked open. Ryder walked in. Late, on purpose. Wearing that artificially warm smile he used when he was about to ruin something. Sorry for the delay, he announced melodramatically. I was gathering evidence. He placed a USB drive on the table. I didn't have to guess what was on it. He had footage of the tunnel night, probably framed to make us look reckless, disorganized, or worse. He sat, crossed one leg over the other, and looked directly at me. A challenge. Or a warning. The board chair turned to us. Would you like to make a statement before we review this? Silas nodded once, then glanced at me. You're speaking, he whispered. My stomach flipped. Me? You're the reason this matters, he said simply. They need to hear that. I stood slowly. The room felt too quiet, like stepping into a song after the intro has already ended. I told them about our mission, about the neighborhoods that had no access to music education, about the kids who stayed after class just to touch an instrument. I explained how every performance funded our programs and how the tunnel incident wasn't rebellion, it was improvisation in a crisis. I didn't attack Ryder.
I didn't need to.
I simply told the truth the way we played music, honest, unpolished, emotionally clear. By the time I finished, the room had changed. The board members weren't leaning back anymore. They were leaning forward. Ryder shifted uncomfortably, sensing he'd lost the rhythm. The board chair finally spoke. Thank you. We'll review everything and announce our decision soon. When we left the building, the air felt lighter. I released a breath I'd been holding since dawn. Silas walked beside me, hands back in his pockets. You did well, he said. Think it's enough? I asked. For today? Yes.
He paused.
But Ryder won't let it end here. I knew he was right. The real showdown hadn't even started yet. The days after the funding board meeting felt strange, like we were suspended between two notes, waiting to hear whether they resolved into harmony or discord. But even as we waited, life inside the rehearsal warehouse kept moving in complicated little ways I couldn't ignore. Maybe it was the stress. Maybe it was the adrenaline still leaking through my system. Or maybe it was simply that once you stand up in front of a room full of people and fight for something you believe in, you come out changed. Either way, I started noticing things. Small things. Like the way Silas watched the door every time we rehearsed, as if expecting Ryder to materialize at any moment. Or the way our equipment seemed slightly rearranged each morning. Not enough to accuse anyone, but enough to make my nerves tighten. And the biggest thing, the silence. Not the comfortable kind we'd built for years, the type that fills itself with unspoken trust. This was different. Tense. A silence with a pulse. On the third day, Silas called for a short break during practice. The others scattered for snacks or fresh air, but he stayed near the mixing console, tapping lightly on the metal casing. Something's off, he murmured. You mean the cable that keeps buzzing? I joked weakly, trying to lighten the mood. But he didn't smile.
No.
I mean here. He tapped again. It's too warm. It wasn't like this last week. I stared at him confused. What does that mean? It means someone's been touching our setup. Maybe trying to sabotage it. A chill crawled up my spine. You think it's Ryder? I think it's someone who wants us to fall apart before the board gives their final word. I didn't want to believe it. Paranoia wasn't usually Silas's style. But after everything that happened, nothing felt impossible anymore. Before I could say anything else, my phone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. You should have let the tunnel fall. You won't survive the next collapse. My breath froze. Silas noticed instantly. What is it? I handed him the phone with shaking fingers. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, I saw something new in him, a kind of focused anger he usually kept buried beneath his calm exterior. This isn't random, he said. This is meant to scare you. It's working, I whispered. He exhaled slowly, grounding himself. I'll handle it. But that didn't comfort me. Not the way he intended. Every time Silas said he'd handle something, it meant he was about to walk into the mess alone. And I wasn't willing to let that happen, not anymore. That night, I stayed late in the warehouse after everyone else had left. I kept telling myself I was just organizing sheet music and making sure the equipment cases were locked, but really I was testing myself, seeing whether the fear could be tamed if I stood in it long enough. It didn't work. Every sound echoed too loudly. Every shadow seemed to twitch. And then I heard footsteps above the ceiling, heavy, purposeful. My heart slammed into my ribs. There wasn't supposed to be anyone upstairs. The old loft had been sealed years ago after the floor partially collapsed. Silas had even bolted the access door shut. The footsteps moved again. This time closer. I backed away until I hit a speaker, gripping the edge of it to steady myself. I wanted to call Silas, but my hands were too shaky to even unlock my phone. Then a board creaked directly overhead. Something or someone was up there. The warehouse lights flickered once, dimmed, then steadied. I swallowed hard. Who's there? My voice trembled, but it was still a voice. No answer. Just one final slow, dragging step. Then silence. The kind that wraps around your throat instead of your ears. I stood frozen for a long moment before forcing myself to move. I grabbed my bag, fled the warehouse, and didn't stop walking until I was outside under the street lamps. Only when I reached the corner did I dare look back. A figure stood inside the warehouse window, barely visible, perfectly still, watching. And even from across the street, I felt the message as clearly as if it had been whispered in my ear. The rhythm we built was cracking, and someone was making sure it shattered. The night after the warehouse incident felt wrong from the moment I stepped outside. Even the air tasted different, thin, metallic, like something had burned nearby. Or was about to. I didn't want to return to the warehouse the next day, but avoiding it would mean letting Ryder, or whoever was working for him, control the tempo of my life. I refused to give him that satisfaction. So I forced myself through the doors, my breath steady, my grip on my bag tight enough to leave marks. The others trickled in with sleepy greetings and half-awake smiles, unaware of what had happened. I tried to match their ease, but Silas noticed instantly. He always did. You didn't sleep, he said quietly as he set down a crate of cables. I heard someone upstairs last night. I whispered back. The loft. Footsteps. Heavy ones. Silas stilled completely. No fidgeting with cables, no readjusting the strap on his case. Just silence. That loft is sealed, he said. Bolted from the outside. I know. Then someone unbolted it. The realization dropped between us like a piece of broken concrete. Before either of us could say more, a sudden crash echoed from the back of the warehouse, so sharp it sliced clean through the morning chatter. Everyone tensed. Silas held up one hand. Stay here. I didn't listen. He moved quickly toward the source of the sound, and I followed at a distance, pulse hammering. When we reached the storage corner, a stack of metal stands had collapsed, except the way they fell didn't look accidental. They'd tipped in the exact direction that would block the emergency exit. A message. Or a trap. Silas crouched beside them, his expression darkening. This wasn't gravity, he muttered. Someone pulled these. But before we could investigate further, the lights flickered, just like the night before. Then again. Then they went out completely. A few gasps rose from the others. Someone cursed softly. I felt the darkness like a hand closing around the back of my neck. Silas reached for a flashlight. I already had my phone out, the screen trembling in my hand. For a moment, the warehouse was nothing but the thin beam of his flashlight cutting through the shadows. Dust floated through it in slow spirals. Footsteps echoed faintly from somewhere above. The loft again. Silas's jaw clenched. "Everyone, stay together," he called out, projecting calm that felt stretched dangerously thin. But the darkness made the silence louder, and soon that silence cracked under the weight of a new sound. A slow tap.
Tap, tap, tap.
Wood striking metal from the loft. If the person upstairs wanted us frightened, the effect was perfect. Every muscle in my body locked. Silas pointed the flashlight upward. The beam landed on the old access door. It was open, just an inch, but wide enough to confirm what I feared most. Someone was inside our space. Someone who had walked above me last night, testing the structure or testing me. "Silas," I whispered, "we need to leave."
Now. He didn't argue.
That scared me more than the footsteps. He guided everyone toward the front exit, keeping himself between the group and the loft. As we moved, I felt eyes following us, real or imagined. I couldn't tell. Once we got outside, the light of the street lamps felt almost too bright, too safe to trust. Silas locked the door behind us, then turned the key again as if checking twice would undo what we'd just experienced. His voice was low when he finally spoke. "This isn't intimidation anymore," he said. "It's escalation." "And the message?" I asked. He looked at the warehouse, its familiar shape now warped by fear. "That we're not dealing with warnings," Silas said. "We're dealing with someone who knows our routines, our equipment, and you." The cold, sinking feeling in my chest confirmed what I already knew. The music wasn't just cracking. Someone was aiming to break it, and us, with precision. And the first fracture had begun directly over my head. The morning after Rhys's final collapse, financial, reputational, and moral, I stood on the ridge overlooking the valley that had once held my grave. The wind was sharp, biting my cheeks, but it felt clean. Cleansing. It carried the smells of crushed pine and cold stone, the scents I'd loved since childhood. Somewhere below, the river roared the same way it had the day I died, its sound an echo, a warning, a promise. And yet everything was different, because this time I wasn't alone. Devin climbed the ridge behind me, boots crunching through the frost-hardened soil. He stopped a few feet away, giving me space the way he always did, respecting my quiet, honoring the weight of what this place meant to me. "You picked a brutal spot for reflection," he said softly. "It's where Rhys tried to erase me," I replied. "It feels right to stand here now, alive, after everything he lost." Devin didn't respond immediately. He let the silence settle, let the landscape speak first. That was something Rhys never understood. Terrain had a voice, and if you didn't listen, it would betray you far faster than any man. Finally, he stepped closer. "Not touching. Not yet." "Rhys didn't lose because you destroyed him," Devin said. "He lost because he built his world on lies. You just exposed the map." I exhaled, the breath unfurling like smoke in the cold. The funding board had believed us, believed the evidence, the calculations, the testimonies of those who had quietly feared Rhys for years. His expedition was revoked, his sponsors pulled out, the foundation stripped him of credentials. Rhys had spent years chasing glory. Now he had nowhere left to go. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked quietly. "Helping me take everything from him?" Devin didn't hesitate. "No," he said. "I regret not meeting you earlier." My heartbeat stumbled, dangerous terrain of its own. Devin moved closer then, slower than any mountain shift, deliberate as erosion, patient as the earth he charted. When he reached my side, his arm brushed mine. The contact was small but grounding, an anchor driven straight into the icy soil. "You came back different," he continued, searching my face with steady eyes. "You saw dangers before they formed. Fault lines no one else knew to look for." I swallowed hard. If he only knew. "And you never questioned me," I whispered. "I trusted the way you read the world," he said simply. "It saved my life more than once." His voice warmed the freezing air between us. For a moment, I looked out at the valley, the place where my breath once faded out forever. And yet here I was, breathing. Alive because fate had rewound the compass. Alive because of Devin. I didn't think I'd ever feel safe with someone again, I admitted. His voice lowered, gentle, certain. You're safe with me, Sarah. Something in me cracked, not like breaking, but like thawing. A long winter shifting into spring. I turned to him fully. Devin stepped closer until our bodies shared the same small pocket of heat. His gloved hand brushed my cheek, the touch tender and cautious, like he was asking permission with something as simple as warmth. My breath hitched. I nodded. His fingers slid behind my jaw, steady and warm. He leaned in, the world shrinking to nothing but the sound of his breathing and the faint scent of cedar clinging to his jacket. When his lips met mine, the kiss was slow, unhurried, certain, mapping me the way he mapped landscapes. Thorough, intentional, like he was tracing coordinates he planned to keep forever. I pressed closer, gripping the front of his coat, grounding myself in the solidity of him. He wasn't fire or fury like Rhys had been. He was steadiness. He was direction. He was home encoded into a person. When we finally parted, Devin rested his forehead gently against mine. No more wrong maps, he whispered. No more men who use you as a tool. From now on, we chart the course together. I smiled, small at first, then steady. I like the sound of that. He took my hand. Our fingers locked instinctively, naturally, like they'd always been meant to find each other across timelines and ruins. We stood together on the ridge, two navigators, two survivors, two people who had refused to let betrayal define the rest of their journey. Below us lay the valley of my death. Before us stretched the world of our future. And for the first time, my compass felt aligned. For the first time, I truly knew where true north was. It was Devin.